Alright, guys, we are back and we're going to start reading chapter 40. Finn. Maybe I should be an actor when I grow up. Finn thought as he buckled his seatbelt in Mrs. Morales' SUV. I'm really good at this. Over breakfast, he'd made himself start thinking about how much he missed his mom. And then, even though Mrs. Morales had gone out special that morning and gotten the exact kind of bagels and cream cheese Finn loved best, big globs of tears had started to form in his eyes. Then his lips began to quiver and he'd pushed his plate away, claiming, "I'm not hungry," when anyone who knew Finn would really know that he was always hungry. Especially when he was really happy, because this was the day they were getting Mom back. And then Mrs. Morales had started fussing over him. "Oh, do you want me to fix you eggs instead? Or something else?" And Finn had to let loose with a loud wail. "I just want my mommy." He started listing all the things he missed about her and finally getting down to the smell of her clothes. And though Chess missed his cue to say, yeah, sometimes when Mom's away, the only thing that makes Finn feel better is sitting in her closet, breathing in that smell, Natalie picked on it and pretended that she noticed Finn getting calmer in Mom's closet. And wasn't it better to try than to have to listen to a hysterical 8-year-old over breakfast? Maybe Finn and Natalie would be famous actors together someday. After they got Mom back. So now Mrs. Morales was driving all 4 of the kids back to the Greystones' house. And even though Natalie was pretending to argue with her mom about going along, "Don't you know I have homework to do before I go to Dad's this afternoon? Don't you know I have a life of my own, even if you try to keep trying to ruin it all the time?" Every time her mother looked away, Natalie kept turning around and winking and waggling her eyebrows at Finn, Emma, and Jess. Finn sniffled and reached for Emma's hand just in case Mrs. Morales looked in her rearview mirror. Chess put his arms around Finn's shoulder. And maybe Chess was kind of good at acting himself because the one-arm hug felt exactly like it did when Chess was really trying to comfort Finn. Soon they were pulling up in front of the Greystone house. Mrs. Morales turned to face Finn. "You can sit in your mom's closet for a little while," she said, "while Chess gets the poster board he needs for his science project, and Emma gets the next book she wants in that series she's reading. Harry Potter, wasn't it?" These were excuses Chess and Emma had added for needing to go along to the house with Finn. Mrs. Morales kind of had an odd gleam in her eye, and maybe they piled it on a little too thick. Was she getting suspicious? Finn gulped in air, ready to distract her. Yeah, we know," Mrs. Morales said quickly. "You didn't let me finish. What I was going to say was, when you come back out, why don't you bring some shirt with you that smells exactly like your mom? So you don't have to come back here the next time you want to, sniff it?" Like Natalie made me bring the teddy bear to act like it was my lovey that first day, Finn thought. Mrs. Morales is going to think I'm a total baby. Finn could live with that if it got Mom back. "Okay," he said, making sure he paused in the middle of the word to sniffle again. And then he drew out the highway part of it as if he were leading into more tears. Chess, Emma, and Natalie all helped him out of the SUV, making it look like the 3 of them just to make sure he could walk upright. They got to the front door, and Finn was really happy about being just a few steps away from no longer having to walk all stooped over and sad. As soon as they were in the house, he could run just as fast and excitedly down to the basement as he wanted. But then, just as Chess started pulling out his key, Natalie took an abrupt step back, almost falling off the porch. "Oh no," she said. "Oh no." "What's wrong?" Finn asked. He glanced over his shoulder. "Your mom's staring at her phone right now. You don't have to keep acting mad." Natalie didn't exactly look mad anymore. She stared at the doorframe, looking more like she'd just seen a ghost. Was she still acting or not? She brushed a finger against the crack between the door and its frame. "It was right here," she murmured. "I'm sure of it." "What are you talking about?" Chess asked. Natalie teetered on the edge of the porch. "Somebody's been here," she said, "since yesterday. Somebody has been in your house." 41. "Explain," Emma said. "How do you know that?" She was not going to freak out about anything until she had all the facts. And then, "Well, get all the facts, see what you want to do. I left a piece of tape on the door," Natalie said. "I got the idea from the chaperones that did it on our Cedar Point trip the last day of 6th grade. They put tape out on everyone's hotel room door so they'd know if anyone tried to sneak out, or at least they told us that's what they did. Emma almost got distracted thinking about how weird life must be in 6th grade. Almost. You tried to tape someone in our house? Finn asked. You thought a piece of scotch tape would trap them there? No, Natalie said. I put the tape there after I came out, when I knew the house was empty, just so I could see if someone came in or out while we were away, like if someone came back through the tunnel and out your front door. Now they knew the tunnel led to an alternate world. That idea was scarier than ever. Was it windy last night? Emma asked. Or stormy? Maybe the tape just blew away. She hadn't been paying attention to the weather. All she'd been able to think about last night was Mom's code in the alternate world. She was so focused. She wasn't even sure what the weather was like now. She glanced over her shoulder. The sun was out. Finn, Chess, and Natalie all made doubtful faces, as if none of them had been paying attention to the weather either. So there, Emma said. Not seeing the tape, that doesn't prove someone was here. If the tape had still been there, still stuck to the door, that could have proved that no one opened the front door after you. But the proof doesn't work in both directions. I guess, Natalie said, as if the words were being dragged out of her. Chess opened the door and they all stepped through, but Emma didn't race down to the basement the way she'd been planning. She stepped cautiously, looking around constantly. Would she notice anything amiss? If someone had been there searching the house, the middle drawer of the coffee table stuck out just a little, maybe 1/8 of an inch. But for all Emma knew, maybe it had been like that before. I put tape over the door in the basement too, Natalie said. The one that leads to your mom's office? What do you all call the boring room? Well, let's go look at that, Finn said, with only a little of his usual bounce. It took a lot out of him pretending to cry for the past half hour, Emma told herself. That's the only thing that's wrong. All 4 of them trooped down the stairs, and Chess reached over and turned on the basement light. Meow? It was only Rocket standing and stretching on the basement couch, but Emma jumped. She was pretty sure the others did too. Finn recovered first. You tell us if anybody sneaked into the house, right? Rocket, Finn asked, bending down to pet the cat. You're a good guard cat, aren't you, boy? Natalie walked towards the boring room door. None of us locked that door after we came back from the alternate world, did we? Emma asked. She'd been too spooked to think about it herself, and besides, she hadn't wanted Mrs. Morales to know about the key and its secret hiding place in the couch leg. Nobody answered Emma. Nobody said anything as they watched Natalie run her hand across the top of the frame and around the door leading to the boring room. This tape's gone too, she said. There's no wind in the basement, Finn said, unnecessarily. But maybe it just fell, Emma argued. Maybe it didn't stick very well, and Rocket started playing with it. You know how he's always carrying ponytail rubber bands all away when Mom or I dropped them on the floor? It was good tape, Natalie said. I stuck it on there hard, and now it's completely gone like someone saw it and took it. Not your cat. Emma still wanted to argue, but this isn't absolute proof, is it? You can't be 100% sure. There's a, margin of error, right? We have to tell your mom, Chess said heavily, turning towards Natalie. He sounded like an old man, maybe someone speaking with his dying breath. Natalie lifted her chin defiantly, mimicking the same kind of head toss she constantly gave her mom. She wouldn't let us back in the house then, she said, not until the cops have examined every inch of the house. You think cops are going to believe anything we tell them about an alternate world? What if the cops keep us out of the house for hours and then we really are too late going to rescue Mom? Finn asked in the same sorrowful little kid voice he'd been using all morning with Mrs. Morales. Only this time, it was entirely real. Here's what we do, Emma said, surprised she could find her own voice. We go into the alternate world. We find a sign in the nearest street corner that gives the information about Mom, and then we bring it back and show it to Mrs. Morales and tell her everything. She saw Chess hesitate, and then she saw his shoulders slump, not as if she'd won the argument, but as if they both lost. Okay, he said, we'll do that. Natalie opened the door to the boring room, and they repeated the procedure from the last trip through the tunnel. Chess pressed the button hidden at the back of the bookcase, just with his finger this time, not his shoe. The doorway to the panic room, secret passage, tunnel to the alternate world opened up. Emma reached in to turn on the light. Should we leave the door open or shut? Natalie asked. No one answered, but no one pulled the door shut behind them either. The lever was above the peanut butter shelf, right? Finn asked. It was like they were all trying to be brave, all trying to prove that they weren't worried about what was going to happen next. We should pay attention to everything, Emma suggested. Count the number of times the panic room spins, how many turns the tunnel takes. If it's nothing but a tunnel now a place that spins like it was the first time we went through here, and the room was already spinning. Emma had to grab a shelf to hold on once again, but this time she made sure she was facing the exact same spot where the door back out to the boring room had been. Watch for the door, she told herself. Count how many times it passes. The spinning made her eyelids want to close, but Emma reached up with her free hand and held her right eye open. Surely we've made a complete rotation. Why haven't I seen the door yet? A moment later, she thought, did we maybe pass it? I forgot to count, so let's just say it's been Emma couldn't quite remember what number came after 1. The room spun faster. Are we going forward, sideways, backwards? Emma thought those words and then wasn't entirely sure what they meant. The spinning stopped. Emma was facing a door once more, and they left the door back into the boring room wide open. With the lights on bright and this door was open just a crack and barely lit, did that prove anything? Emma sensed rather than fully saw the others starting to unfreeze and let go of the shelves that they'd been holding on to. So, there are shelves at the end of this tunnel now, Emma wondered, even though they weren't here when we came back going the other direction with Mrs. Morales. And she never felt the room or tunnel spin at all in either direction. Emma wanted so badly to figure out how that tunnel worked. Maybe the spinning opened the tunnel. Then the section of the room with shelves snapped back to being part of the Greystones' house again. Maybe the tunnel stayed open if... Everybody okay? Chess asked in such a grim voice that Emma could tell he was thinking. Mom isn't. She's in danger. Emma forgot about figuring out the tunnel and took a wobbly step towards the door. It smells as bad as before, Finn said, wrinkling up his nose, maybe worse. Burning rubber, Natalie said, sniffing the air. Dead mice, formaldehyde. Everything horrible all at once, Chess said, as if he were ending the discussion. Let's get this over with. He went through the door first, stepping out in the darkness. After he switched on the light, the others followed and Natalie started to shut the door behind them. No, Emma exclaimed. Last time Chess put a can in the doorway to prop it open. We have to do everything the same. The others watched her grab a can of peaches from a shelf and wedge it to the doorway. Nobody said anything. Do I feel so terrible now just because I'm worried about Mom and I don't really understand the alternate world? Emma asked herself. Or is there something about this place that really messes with your mind? Maybe it was just the trip through the spinning room that had thrown her off. If that really had been a journey between alternate dimensions, no wonder she felt disoriented. Emma rubbed her forehead and shoved her hair back from her face. 1, she told herself. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At least she could remember how to count. I should have stayed up all night and figured out how to translate the rest of Mom's code, she told herself. That probably explains everything we want to know. All they had to do was grab a poster and go back to Mrs. Morales. Maybe if Mrs. Morales decided to call the cops, there'd be cops who could help with the code. Maybe they'd figure it out in a matter of minutes. Emma was only a little girl. Why had she thought she could do anything? Stop that, she told herself. What's wrong with you? She grabbed Finn's hand and then Chess's. Come on, she said. She put her hand on Finn's shoulder. All 4 of them walked through the empty basement and up the stairs in a clump, almost like a single creature. An amoeba, maybe. The first floor of the house was still empty, the windows still boarded up. It's like our house, Finn whispered, peering around, his eyes wide. Our house without us, without Mom and without Rocket, and really, really sad. They burst out of the house and Emma wanted to gulp in fresh air, but the air outside smelled just as bad, only bad in a different way. More like burning rubber, less like rotting dead mice, she thought. Still, it was a smell that beckoned Emma forward, as if a smell could whisper, come see. You have to find the source to destroy it, so you don't have to live with this forever. You have to look now. We should prop this door open too, Chess said firmly. Emma said that he'd carried a can of corn up from the basement. Good thinking, Natalie said. Were her teeth chattering? Was Natalie that scared? Check your phone, Emma suggested. Natalie barely glanced at the screen. No signal, she whispered. Chess left the can in the door. They all inched forward off the porch down the driveway. Do you feel like we're going through patches of fog? Emma asked. Only it's patches of feelings, hope, fear, and it goes along with how strong the smell is? Yes, Natalie said. I thought I was the only one feeling that, Finn said. I thought I was going crazy. Shh, he pointed. They reached the end of the driveway and the edge of the tall, faded, multicolored fence. And out in the street, people were walking by in clumps. Is that Mrs. Childers? Emma whispered. The white-haired woman who'd been their friendly, chatty next-door neighbor was as long as Emma could remember. Walked by without even looking at them. Though maybe it wasn't her after all. Her face seemed to have extra lines and wrinkles as if she started frowning and squinting all the time. She was a lot thinner, too. She was wearing a shirt that was bright orange, navy blue, the same colors as the jacket of the teenage boys they'd seen before. Did the high school change its school colors and nobody told me? Emma wondered. The Mrs. Childers they knew wouldn't have bothered dressing in a sports team color any more than Emma would. How different could people be in this world? I don't think anybody's going to know us here, Chess whispered back. If anybody remembers us, it would be from when we were really little kids. We didn't look the same. Except for Natalie, Finn chimed in. Natalie flipped the hood of her sweatshirt over her head, hiding her hair and the top part of her face. Maybe we should get away from the standing in front of the house, Natalie said, just in case. Without even discussing a direction, they all turned and started following Mrs. Childers, the others clusters of people, and none of them around them were talking. Many of them wearing the same shades of orange and blue as Mrs. Childers, but their grim expression made it seem more like they were headed towards a funeral than to a sporting event. Is there anyone in the crowd who doesn't look afraid? Emma wondered. Even the littlest children, also mostly dressed in orange and blue, cowered against their parents' shoulders. One toddler actually seemed to be trembling with fear. No, wait, now everybody looks angry, and now it's back to fear again. Was it possible for lots of people to have their feelings controlled all at once? Maybe by a smell? But who's doing it, Emma wondered, and why? There's a sign on that pole up on the corner, Chess murmured, but I can't see it. He took 2 long strides forward, breaking off the others. Emma stretched out her legs to catch up with them. Besides her, Finn and Natalie did the same. Finn was almost running. It's, Finn began. Emma clapped her hand over his mouth so he couldn't give them away. It was Mom's face on the sign. Good, Emma told herself. That's what we wanted. Now grab that sign and run back to the house, back through the tunnel, spinning room, whatever it takes us back to Mrs. Morales. That's all we have to do. But it was so terrible to see her beloved mother's face under the dark, nasty words, criminal caught. It was indisputably Mom. Her name, Kate Greystone, appeared directly below along with the words enemy of the people. But this picture of her mother Emma had never seen before. Maybe it was just taken after she was captured. Maybe it was altered. Everything strong about Mom's face looked defiant and ugly. Everything hopeful looked mocking. She still looked like Mom, but she also looked like a criminal or enemy. Emma dropped her gaze, forcing herself to read the rest of the sign. Public trial and sentencing. All must attend. Saturday, May 9th, 10 a.m., public hall. Emma's eyes darted back to the time. 10 a.m. Natalie, she whispered, check your phone. What time is it? Natalie didn't move fast enough. Emma reached over, yanked the phone out of Natalie's sweatshirt pocket. She hit the button to light the screen. The clock numerals glowed in white. 9:45. We don't have time to go back to Mrs. Morales, Emma gasped. We have to go rescue Mom now. Chapter 42. Chess. Cover for me, Chess said, reaching for the sign in the pole. Don't let anyone see. Didn't you hear me? She demanded. This isn't the time for the plan. That sign doesn't matter anymore. Even with Emma tugging on him, Chess kept moving his arm forward. Here's what we do, he said. His voice came out sounding deceptively calm and steady. You and Finn take his sign back to Mrs. Morales. Tell her everything. Natalie and I will go rescue Mom. The plan seemed so clear and perfect in his brain. Finn and Emma would be safe this way. They would go with the grown-ups, maybe even cops. But as Chess yanked on the paper sign, he also turned to glance at Emma. And she couldn't have looked more betrayed and hurt if Chess had balled up his fist and smashed it into her face full force. "You don't think we can help?" she whispered. "You'd still be helping," Chess said. He held out the sign to her, just in a different way, by getting Mrs. Morales to help. "No," Finn said. He crossed his arms over his chest. "Right," Emma said, mimicking his stance. "I say no, too. You can't make us go back, Chess." Had they been taking lessons all week from how Natalie treated her mother? "Don't you understand?" he began. What was he going to tell them? Dad died in this horrible place. He was murdered. Do you want that to happen to us? We're just a bunch of kids. What can we do to rescue Mom? Don't you see how even Natalie's terrified too? Did you see how she had her phone primed to 911 the whole time we were walking through our own house in case someone's still there and jumped out at us? And now there's no way to call 911. And maybe the police here are the bad guys if they arrested Mom." "We understand that we have to rescue Mom," Emma said. "Don't you wish you could have done something to rescue Dad before he died?" She understood enough. She found the one thing to say that would change Chess's mind. Chess began. He looked down at the poster in his hand. "It didn't seem real. There wasn't enough time. Why hadn't they figured out a way to come last night as soon as they knew about the alternate world?" "Because we didn't want to believe any of this was real." To the others, he settled for saying, "We don't even know where the public hall is." "I think we can just follow everyone else," Natalie said. "All must attend." She was reading from the sign. Chess stuffed it into the pocket of his windbreaker, his dark green windbreaker, which looked out of place in the midst of so many people wearing navy blue and orange. At least Natalie's sweatshirt was black, which sort of blended in, but Emma's t-shirt was maroon and Finn was a bright yellow. They might as well be wearing signs that spelled out, "We don't belong here," or maybe "Arrest us too." "Fine," he told Natalie, biting off a word in a way that made her wince. He tried to soften his voice, more like a bark. "Let's walk fast." He couldn't understand what Emma had meant about going through the patches of feelings. Fear, hope, fear, hope, fear. For him, as they moved forward in a group, trying not to be too conspicuous about passing other groups ahead of them, he felt more like he was on a constant downward slide into despair. "We don't even have a plan," he thought. "We can't have a plan because we don't know where Mom is being held, or how many guards are around her. We don't know anything about this public hall or a trial or sentencing works here. Maybe I don't understand anything about alternate worlds. I thought there were supposed to be similarities beyond the design of one house and people with the same names being in both worlds. Nothing looks familiar around us. Nothing." This last part, Chess realized, wasn't entirely true. The houses they passed were all fenced off or hidden behind towering hedges, so he could barely see any of them. But when they turned a corner, he saw a small pond off to the right. It was the same size and shape as the retaining pond in his own neighborhood, but the pond back home had a lilac forsythia behind it, which picnic tables, a small playground, and a winding bike path off to the side. This pond looked muddy and dark, surrounded by nothing but sparse blades of dying grass. Any picnic tables or playground equipment that might have once stood nearby had been swallowed up in the dense, thorny-looking bushes and trees. Why is it so different? Chess wondered. What happened here? Had Mom seen all of this when she sneaked back to the world to try to rescue the 3 other kids named Rochester, Emma, and Finn? Had she understood what the alternate world was like? Had it been this bad back when Chess's family had lived here? Chess remembered that the boys who had recognized Emily had said the criminal was captured by SWAT teams right on the same street as the abandoned house. No matter how much Mom knew or understood, her plan had failed before she even got off the first block. So what hope is there for us kids, he wondered. He kept walking forward anyhow. After they'd gone 6 or 8 blocks, the scenery changed even more. The street opened out into a wide boulevard with imposing buildings on either side. Maybe as the neighborhood Chess knew was falling apart, this part of the town turned fancy, more like a big city. These buildings were steel, glass, and hard to tell apart. They all held enormous banners that swept from their lowest to the highest windows. The banners were orange and blue, and maybe they were just for some holiday that existed in an alternate world, but not in the world that Chess knew. Maybe they were just supposed to be festive, like decorations people put out for July 4th, Halloween, or Christmas. But these banners were too stiff and formal to seem cheery. They made Chess think more of military flags, as if somebody invading army had taken over and wanted everyone to know. Chess wanted so badly to get away from this strange, unfamiliar street. But so many people surrounded them now that he and the others could no longer dart ahead as a pack. Slipping beyond the rest of the crowd, he felt Emma slide her hand into his. When he glanced over his shoulder, he saw that she was also holding on to Finn's hand, and Finn was holding on to Natalie's. "You lead," Emma whispered, and Chess nodded. They had to thread their own way through the crowd, single file now. Holding on to one another was the only way to keep from being separated. If we get out of here alive, I'll have to thank Natalie for being at the end, making sure Finn doesn't get pulled away and swallowed up in the crowd, Chess thought. Maybe it counted as hopeful that he could even think if we get out of here alive. Soon, the crowd grew thick, that Chess could no longer see where they were going. If he craned his neck, he could squint up at the murky sky. Otherwise, he couldn't see past the steel and glass buildings with their blue and orange banners or their blue and orange clothes of most of the people around him. So he was surprised when he slid his foot forward and it clunked against a marble step. Then there was another. "Stairs," he called back to Emma, Finn, and Natalie. "Be careful going up the stairs." Others beside him were talking now, too, an excited buzz all around. Heard she wanted to kill us all. See her get what she deserves. People like that should be punished as severely as... Chess felt sick to his stomach. Were they talking about his mom? His mother who wouldn't even kill a spider in the house. He wanted to put his hands over Emma and Finn's ears so at least they didn't have to hear, but he could only keep trudging forward and up the stairs. Partly carried along by the crowd, partly pulling the others along. The stairs ended in a long flat surface, and then the crowd bottlenecked through a pair of narrow doorways. The doors and door frames were marble too, ornately carved as they squeezed through. Chess's face pressed painfully against the stone head of a creature that might have been a demon or just a man caught in the worst agony of his life. But on the other side of the doorway, suddenly there was space. Chess saw a giant pit-like auditorium filling before him. Okay, we've come this far, just find Mom. After coming in from outside, he would have expected to need time for his eyes to adjust to the dim interior of the public hall, or whatever this huge ornate building actually was. But he had the opposite problem. The glare at the front of the vast open room was almost too intense to look at. Blinking and squinting helped him realize that the searing light came from a giant screen at the front of the room. It was probably the equivalent of 2 or 3 stories high and maybe the width of a city block. A dark shadow blocked the middle of the screen. Was it a chair? Was someone in it? Suddenly, the glow of the screen changed. Now there was a spotlight on the chair, and the overpoweringly bright blankness of the screen was replaced with a magnified image of the stage before it. The camera angle zoomed in and panned from the floor up, showing the bolts holding the chair in place. The blue jean-covered legs shackled to the rungs of the chair, then 2 wrists held together by handcuffs. It was all wrong. The bolts, the shackles, the handcuffs, even the solitary placement of the chair. Those were all things for criminals, for prisoners, for people who couldn't be trusted. It was all wrong because Mom was the one sitting in that chair. Chess knew long before the camera reached her face. Maybe he'd even know when the chair was just a dark shadow, a dark blot in the overwhelming glow. In spite of everything, Chess felt almost proud that Mom could sit so calmly, imposingly, even in that cage of a chair. She kept her shoulders back, her head high, her expression firm and clear. This was her "nobody can hurt me" pose. Chess had seen her look exactly like that in the days and weeks and months after Dad died, every time she left the house. But he knew better than anyone that it had only been an act 8 years ago, and surely it was only an act now. The resolution on the screen was so precise that he saw Mom's chin tremble ever so slightly. She only lost control for an instant, but it was enough to make the crowd jeer and cry out, "Coward! Traitor!" Nobody silenced them. Nobody said she's important until proven guilty, remember? Chess sniffed, the foul smell of the alternate world filling his nostrils once again. He could feel the anger of the crowd growing around him, like something physical, a beast devouring everyone. He felt a surge of anger himself. What could Mom say or do to defend herself against that mob? What could anyone say or do to help her? The full meaning of the glowing screen and the chair on the stage finally sank in. "We're already too late," he turned to hiss at Emma. "If we try to rescue Mom now, every single person in this room will see us." All right, until next time.